It's the five reads of the anthology.
Hello, fellow ghoulies, and welcome to another instalment of Nat Wiston Reviews. And today we're going back to my top 5 reads of the anthology. And today I will be doing It Calls from the Forest, look at that cover, by Eriee River Publishing. Now, I've already done a review. It is up on Amazon, my page, and Goodreads. But I actually really thought it was kind of one of those that stuck with me so much. I wanted to do my top 5 just so you guys get a feel for what exactly I was feeling when I was listening to it. Yes, that's right, readers. I was doing an audiobook. I actually heard a lot about Eriee River through various different networkings, social media, and I couldn't resist. I had to get one of their anthology collections just to get an idea of, you know, what all the fuss was about, really. So, without further ado, I will move on to my top 5 reads of the anthology, starting with my number 1 spot. Now, just to let you know, if your name does not come up on my top 5, do not worry. Eriee River made it bloody hard for me to pick my top 5. There were so many really good concepts and really interesting and immersing stories in this collection. So for me, it was bloody hard to pick ones that went into the top 5. There are a lot of good honourable mentions. Hell, there are stories in here where your scabs talk to you. So you cut yourself and it's going, take me to the bird, take me to the peak. That freaked me out. Very good concept. Didn't expect it at all, not gonna lie. Very much didn't know that was coming. Different concepts, different interpretations of forest fear. By far, there is a nice collection in there. They didn't skimp. There are some incredibly good structured stories in there. Great premise, great stories. I love the characters. Some of them are related to more than others. The pace of the stories was great. There wasn't overflowing detail. Like sometimes you'll get a story and it's like, oh god, just get to the story. The door is pink with shades of red, we know. Didn't have that problem with any of the stories in here. It was relevant detail and relevant information for the story. There wasn't dumps, as they like to call it, so information dump, where it's like, this is what you need to know, rather than actually, you know, falling into the story with the emotion and following it along. You didn't have too much of the show and too much show and tell. It was just great. I really did enjoy these stories. It gave me a great insight into how to develop a story as well, because the suspense and atmosphere that were in each one of these is definitely incredible. I was really impressed. So I can understand why they've got the reputation they have currently building. I mean, at the moment, it's kind of a toss-up between them and Godless at this moment in time with publications. But anyway, I will stop waffling. Shall I stop waffling? I've lost Creepy Bunny. Oh no, let's just show. See, Creepy Bunny is here. He's just having a little bit of a snooze.
Of course I'm having a snooze. Bore the shit out of me, Jodie.
Anyway, let's move on to the top one. Forest Man. And that one was by Holly Cornetto. Forest Man, great concept. Very much a Slenderman vibe. By that I mean the monster, like the main boogeyman in this story, is perfect. I think, it's like I was listening to Jesse's podcast recently, and he was talking about the perfect idea of a boogeyman. Holly nailed it with the boogeyman in this one, because you knew what the boogeyman wanted, but there was still that eerie mystery around it. You didn't know how the boogeyman would appear. That you don't essentially see the boogeyman as much, but you know it's there. I mean, the creepy rhyming that went with it as well. I love the structure as well. It's very similar to kind of Lady of the Lake by Jesse, with the to and from, past and present, past and present kind of story. It was easy to keep up with, so I knew when the characters were talking in the present tense and when they were reminiscing about their childhood, when they were kids, exploring the forests when they were at camp. And I also really hated Lee. He was an arsehole of a character, and how he kept it to himself, what he did all that time, and there was no inkling that, well, there was an inkling, you knew he was an arsehole, but you didn't realise he was that much of an arsehole. You'll understand when you read the story. I loved the interaction between Nate and Jennifer. I thought it was really sweet how it's kind of, there was a bit of progression between how they were as kids, how they are as adults, and it kind of broke me a little bit to see Jennifer deteriorate the way she did as a character. And you kind of do feel for Nate. I mean, the fact that he kind of got passed over, you'll understand that again when you read the story, for the jackass who basically, in my opinion, just, it just felt really volatile what happened between her and Lee anyway. But you can tell Nate genuinely cares about her, and you want something good to happen to Nate. You don't want anything bad to happen to Jennifer. Again, great concept, great stories, relatable. There's very real in my mind, and also that nursery rhyme will haunt me until I'm dead. Thank you, Holly. Thank you so much. Anyway, without further ado, move on to number 2, The Thing in the Woods by D.R. Smith. D.R. Smith, if you are a John Carpenter fan, you should very much pat yourself on the back, because you did a brilliant job in this story of giving a very big thing vibe. I liked it. The fact that, you know, these kids, I just like, Mike, Austin and Justin decide to find this rock and go, I'm going to take it home with me. No, you leave it in the bloody woods. Unless it's like a shiny rock that, you know, it's like an amethyst or something. Yeah, you could probably get away with that. But some moon rock thing that is different temperatures when you guys touch it, and it's getting off a weirdly vibe, stays in the forest, kids. Stays in the forest. But they wouldn't listen anyway, and they won't listen because it's already pre-written and pre-audioed, and I don't know why I was yelling at the audio at one point. Anyway, he gets it home, and that's when all the freaky shit starts kicking off, and the gore and the concept of just fear, of just me imagining this creature in my head, made my skin crawl to the limit. You did a brilliant job. Again, that one made my number 2 because I'm still having nightmares about Alien Cat. So it was a really good sci-fi horror concept, and I loved it. And it definitely makes me not want to pick rocks up in the forest. Anyway, moving on to number 3, Jodie Spot by Mark Towse. Now, Mark, if I'm saying your last name wrong, I'm so sorry. But I've seen his name bobbing around the place, and I now understand why. I mean, in this short story that he did, one completely brilliant concept. Not your typical, like, fear of the forest. If anything, it's almost like a manifestation of guilt. Best way I can put it. You don't know whether or not he really experienced the event that he goes through, or whether it's him coming to terms in his own mind in a dream sequence, or whether it actually did happen and he managed to get away from it by confronting his guilt and by releasing himself and forgiving himself for the missing his missing sister. You will never know. But honestly, I kind of felt sorry for Steve, because it seemed like his parents blamed him constantly for Jodie's missing, and this was his way of trying to find his sister, but also kind of confronting his own inner monster itself. So again, I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you felt about Jodie Spot if you guys get round to reading it, but that was my interpretation. And I thought it was incredibly creative on how he did the story and how he put the emotion across. Again, fast-paced, really, really good story to keep up with, and very much like a golden gem in that anthology. Then we move on to number 4, Lazarus' Respite, where we follow poor little Walter, who is your typical sad little boy who gets bullied, and I feel really sorry for him. And Lazarus Respite was by Micheal Subjack. Now, Micheal did something I can't do. I find it really hard to do. I mean, I do first person perspective, third person's perspective. You've got a great selection in there of different perceptions in the anthology. But the hardest one for me is a child's perception of things. So I can do it from an adult's point of view, not a problem. But a child for me is really hard because I don't know. It's very hard for me to come to an idea of their emotions, how they act, how they walk. I haven't got kids, so I don't know how a child walks or how it acts. And, I've got my niece, but, she's stupidly clever and she acts older than she is anyway. But if I was to do it from a child's part, this is why I struggle to do, children's stories, children's horror. I only know my gore and horror, and I would make children cry with my work, which is why my niece isn't allowed to read my stuff yet. But he did it brilliantly. I felt Walter's emotions. I felt Walter's fear. It was simple, not overcomplicated. You felt like you were looking at it through Walter's eyes. You felt very much for Walter. He's your typical little boy with glasses that gets bullied by everyone because he's smaller than everybody, and he's weaker than everyone because he has asthma, and he's just unfortunately he's a bully magnet. But how the story resolves and the revelation at the end, perfect for me. I really loved it. I kind of wanted to see more of Walter, and if there is more stories following on how he progresses as an adult from the events, happily read it. Really well done. And that moves me to my next one, which is a matter of recycling. I loved this, but I also loved Tim's other work, which, by the way, he has 2 in here. And it's understandable why he has 2 in here, because they were just incredible. I mean, a matter of recycling definitely makes me fear nature a bit more and makes me step slightly to the side whenever I see compost. But basically, it's the darker side of nature is probably the best way to describe it. This main character, Stuart, is from a young age almost manipulated by the forest clearing. There's a clearing and there's these creatures that devour pretty much anything. Think forest piranha, probably the best way to describe it, but it's more sinister. The fact that after he feeds, this probably the best way of putting it, feeds these forest piranhas, the fact that he then gets this incredibly unique connection to the forest, its hunger, its desire to eat, and it physically causes him pain as well as emotional need to satisfy the forest. I loved it. It linked the two seamlessly. I wanted to basically see where this went on from, and if there is a chance of a follow-up from this, I'd totally read it, because you follow Stuart right up into adulthood, and it moves in a way that you can keep up with how his life has changed, how it's affected him, how it's kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? It is kind of warped him as a human. It's warped him as an adult. The forest has changed his whole concept. Like the fact that he doesn't call for help when his friend gets accidentally hurt in the forest. He feeds the body of his friend to... It completely squiffs his entire moral compass. Like the whole moral compass goes out the window with this guy, because all that matters to him is the hunger and suppressing that hunger for as long as possible. He ends up becoming a serial killer in the process. But I loved the way that Tim just kind of pulls you in and keeps you there. Again, I've said this before, there are great authors that do this kind of thing, where they'll bring a plot and they'll bring this concept together, and it moves great, it's structured well, You want to follow Stuart's life. You want to see what happens to Stuart. You kind of feel sorry for him because he didn't choose to go this route, but it seems like the route has kind of chosen him. And the forest has this hunger that he just can't seem to satisfy. And it eventually sends him mad. And I loved it. And then you had the other story, which is basically working on an old folk tale. Again, there is so many good things in this book, and I'm so happy to have actually got the chance to read it. I mean, there's a couple of good mentions in there that I have to mention because they sat with me really well too. Not Work Hill, really loved it. It's like a crime mixed up with folk again. Works on Irish folk, I think. But I can't get over how creative some of these stories were. Like, I wouldn't even have thought of half of the concepts that sit in this book right now. And it's not your typical kind of like, oh, something's coming from the forest, or there's a monster in the forest. It's something more sinister. I mean, there's one in there that works on a story where a baby's crying. And only kids under the age of, I think it's 15, can hear this baby crying. And it's 8 o'clock, after 8 o'clock, this baby starts crying. And the freaking conclusion to that story I was not expecting it at all. It was more of a human kind of fear. Like, you get real fear in these stories as well as your supernatural fear. There's the Tooth Fairy one, which was really cool. And I love a bit of fantasy horror. It really does kind of mix it up a bit. But honestly, guys, if you do get a chance, check out the authors. At some point, I think I am just going to do like a list of authors that I've really got into recently and share their work. Maybe do that as a feature. If you guys think that's cool, let me know. And if you've got any work you want to share with me as well, feel free. However, just let you know, my to be read list has kind of because I've got my Kindle, I've got my physical copies, and I've got my Godless now. Thanks, Godless. Now I have more books. It is kind of slowly building up. At this rate, I'm just going to get Creepy Bunny to read it.
Oh, bitch, you can fuck right off.
Very nice. I'll remember that next time, you little shit. Anyway, thank you guys for being with me again. I will be back at some point. I'm just going through a novel at the moment by another really great author. I read his work in Hope Screams Eternal. Well, one of his stories really grabbed me, so I got his book. So I will let you guys know in due time when that will be coming out. I'll do my little previews as always. Creepy Bunny may be doing a comeback at some point with Creepy Corner, so if you guys have art that you love to show off, feel free to send it my way. It might end up on Creepy Corner. All for supporting you guys, all you authors out there, all you independent artists out there, all you publications, indie publications that give us the chance to create our work and push it out to the world. You're freaking amazing. Keep smiling, guys. Keep positive and keep writing. Don't give up. We love you.